Now, in this next section here, we're going to talk about the cost of home ownership. And actually, the computations are really going to be the same that we did for the car. So these fixed rate loans where you have that interest rate that's not changing and you're making monthly payments, it's the same formula, whether it's a student loan for college or a car loan or a house loan or a personal loan, it's all the same. If you have a fixed rate, then you can use that same formula to find all of them and see what that monthly payment's going to be. So that can be really helpful when you're planning and thinking about taking out a loan, particularly these larger loans. So a mortgage is a type of loan. It's a long-term installment loan for the purpose specifically of buying a home. And what happens is the property is pledged as security. So if you don't make payments on the loan, then the lender may actually repossess your house, right? So if you stop paying the mortgage, then the bank can take your house away. So that's basically what it says. Your house is your security for the payment for the loan. Your down payment is the portion of the sale of the house that you pay to the seller. So you want to think of this as cash. So these would be your savings. So let's say you're buying a house and you have $10,000 saved for a down payment. So that's money that you're paying in cash. It's not for the loan. This is usually computed as a percent. So usually we try to put 20% of a house down. 20% of the selling price is the ideal percent. But not everybody can do that. Some people put 10% down. Some people put 3% down. There's different types of programs for new homeowners and things like that where they allow less of a down payment. The amount of the mortgage, so the actual loan amount, so your mortgage is just your loan, is the difference between the sale price and the down payment. So you take that sale price and you subtract your down payment. And that gives you your loan amount, right? The price of the mortgage. Now, monthly payments for a mortgage depend on the amount of the mortgage, which is called the principal still, the interest rate, and the duration of the mortgage, meaning how long you have it for. I would say most people probably do a 30-year mortgage. Some do 15 or 20 years, but 30 years tends to be a pretty standard length for a home loan. Mortgages can have a fixed interest rate or a variable interest rate. So a fixed rate mortgage, you have the same monthly principal and interest payment for the entire time of the loan. So if your payment is, let's say, $1,000 per month, it'll be the same $1,000 per month for the entire 30 years, theoretically. So it's not going to change. The only thing that can change are your taxes and your insurance. So you do want to keep that in mind. Sometimes people pay those all together, like in one bill. So if you see changes on a fixed rate loan, it's not the loan, it's your taxes and your insurance that are changing. There's also variable rate mortgages, also known as adjustable rate mortgages, are called ARMs. And they have payment amounts that can change from time to time, depending on the change in the interest rates. So they can't change every single month, but there's usually some sort of terms agreement where they can change potentially every 6 months or every 1 year or something like that. And there's usually a cap on how far it can change. So they are less predictable than fixed rate mortgages because your rates could be changing. They could go up or they could go down. But again, you don't know. So that's the one thing you have to be careful about. So there are limits on how often they can change and by how much. But if you're doing this for 30 years, you could have some significant change in your rate over 30 years. So it's something to be careful about. They do often start out at lower rates than fixed rate mortgages. So if you are like a flipper and you're going to flip the house, you have a construction company and you're going to sell it, or you're only going to be living there for a short amount of time before you're selling it, then maybe a adjustable rate mortgage would be good for you because it usually starts at a lower rate. But again, you just have to be careful and know that that rate can change. Now, when you're buying your home, the monthly mortgage payments depend on the amount of the mortgage, how long the loan is for, and the interest rate. Most lending institutions also require the buyer to pay 1 or 2 points at the time of closing. So points you want to think of as fees. They don't get wrapped into, or I guess you could. They can get wrapped into your mortgage, but usually they don't. Usually they're like a fee that you would pay theoretically in cash. So a point is equal to 1% of the loan amount. So it's a one-time charge and it's equal to 1% of the loan amount. So example, 2 points means that the buyer pays 2% of the loan amount at the closing. So the closing is when you sign all the paperwork so that you actually get the loan and you own the house. So what usually happens is a lot of times banks will have you pay more points for a lower interest rate over time. So if you're willing to pay 2 or 3 points, you may get a lower rate. Whereas if you're willing to not pay any points, you may have a slightly higher rate. And again, it's something to think about. So if you're not going to stay in the home for a long time, then maybe it's not worth you paying the extra points up front if you know you're going to sell in a few years. Or if you know you're going to be in that home more long term, then perhaps that lower rate makes sense more long term, right? So it's something that you really have to think about. And it's really a personal choice that you would talk to about with your bank and see what's best for you. The Truth in Lending Disclosure Statement does show the buyer the APR, or annual percentage rate, for a mortgage, and the APR takes into account interest rates and points. So it does take into account additional fees like points. So it just helps a buyer consider what the best rate is for them, right? So the APR kind of includes those fees in it. You do have to be careful because the APR is not totally standardized. So some banks may include certain fees and other banks may include different fees. So you just, again, want to be really careful and make sure you read through all the fine print on any of these loans. A monthly mortgage payment is used to repay the principal and interest on the loan, but a lot of times when you pay your mortgage, you will also pay your taxes at the same time. Sometimes your insurance at the same time. So what happens is the bank will collect your taxes for you and put that money into an escrow account. And then they will pay your taxes to the city for you or to whoever you're paying to. So that's something to keep in mind too. So when you hear an escrow account, that is the money that is going towards your taxes typically, or your insurance, not towards your loan. But the bank collects them usually for you at the same time. So you make a one payment and then it all just gets dispersed appropriately to the bank for the loan and then to your city or your state for your taxes and things like that. Your city typically for your taxes. The reason why the bank does that, as a little side note here, is because let's say you stop making payments on your house. Taxes always get paid first. The city and the state gets paid first. So if you stop making payments, you're not paying your taxes and you're not paying your loan, then the city or the state can take your house first. They take their money for the taxes and then the bank gets what's left over. So it's in the bank's best interest for them to collect your taxes at the same time and make sure that they're paid so that they don't have they're not going to lose out on the house if you don't pay your taxes. That's kind of why they do it. It's in their best interest that you pay your taxes, because if you don't pay your taxes, then the city or state can take your house and then they don't get their loan money either. So that's kind of why they do it. Now, to find the monthly payment, we're using the same exact formula that we did in the last section. So nothing really new here, just new terminology, things like mortgage and stuff like that. All right, so let's do an example. The price of a home is $195,000 and the bank is requiring a 10% down payment and 2 points at the time of closing. The cost of the home is financed with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 7.5%. Now we're going to focus on fixed rate mortgages here because adjustable rate mortgages, we don't really know how the interest rate is going to change. So it's hard for us to plan for a full 30 years. So we're going to stick with just a fixed rate mortgage in our calculations. So the first thing is, what is the down payment? Well, our down payment here is 10%. That means 10% of the sale price. So 10% is 0.10. So we're going to multiply that by the 195. And we're going to see that $19,500 is a 10% down payment. So if you want to own this house and the bank requires 10% down, then you need to have almost $20,000 sitting in the bank ready to go and to be paid towards that house. So it can be a lot of money to have a down payment. So the amount of the mortgage then is going to be the sale price minus the down payment. So your sale price is $195,000. That's how much you're going to buy the house for. And you're going to put down that $19,500 in cash. So like, you know, you have it in the bank. It's not going on the loan. So your loan amount or your mortgage amount is going to be the $175,500. Now, to get the interest rate of 7.5%, your bank is charging you 2 points. So how much are 2 points? Well, each point is 1%. So 2 points means 2, and it's of the loan amount. So not of the sale price, of the loan. So you're going to do 0.02, make that into the decimal form, and we're going to multiply it by the 175,500, and you're going to get $3,510. So when you purchase a house, there are fees. So not only do you have to pay the seller almost $20,000 up front, now you have to pay the bank another $3,510. And there's usually other closing cost fees that you have to pay along the way, things for like an appraisal or home inspections and stuff like that. So you need to make sure you have probably at least another cushion of, I would say, I'm just guessing rounding here, maybe 5,000 to 7,000 in addition to your down payment, just to cover other fees, things like closing costs or points or home inspections and so on. So there's a lot that goes into purchasing a house. Find the monthly payment, again, excluding taxes and insurance. So we're just talking about the loan here. We're not talking about taxes from the city or insurance on the house. So we're going to find our loan payment. So let's get that formula written out here. All right, so our P here is 175,500. Our rate is pretty high at 7.5%. Now, rates do fluctuate over time, and you're going to see that as rates on savings accounts increase, usually rates on loans increase as well. And when loans are down, then savings account returns are also down, things like that. So right now, 7.5% is very high. A lot of times we're seeing like 3% right now, even 2%. So again, it's going to depend on the time that the problem is written. All right, so our T here is 30 because we're doing this for 30 years, and our N is 12 because we're making monthly payments. So we're going to have 175.075 over 12. Okay, so when you do your exponent, this is quite a large number. This is going to be negative 360 because you end up making 360 payments over 30 years here. And then we can go ahead again, just plug this all into our calculator. And what you get is about 1227 here. So we're just rounding to the nearest whole number, but typically your mortgages do have decimal places. They don't usually round to the nearest whole number. They usually round to 2 decimal places. So the mortgage is going to be around 1227 per month. And again, this does not include your taxes or your insurance or your bills or anything else. This is just the loan. Now, in the last chapter, I gave you a little link for a bank rate calculator to help you do a loan payment. It will do this one for you too. So if you want to check your mortgage calculations, it's the same formula. You can just plug it in and they'll give you those values there too. All right, so find the total interest paid over 30 years. So what we do is we take our payment times the number of months. So 30 years times 12 months a year is 360 months. So you have the payment, and then you have the number of payments that you're making. And then you're going to subtract whatever the original loan amount was. All right, so when I multiply the first group together, I get 441,720. And then when I subtract, I get 266,220. So this $266,220, this is the interest that you pay for that house or that loan over 30 years. So that loan that was supposed to be for $175,000 is going to cost you $441,000 at the end of 30 years. Mind you, this is a really large interest rate. So this is a bit high. but it isn't uncommon to see interest like this, like $100,000 in interest, $200,000 in interest on these loans. It's not, because it's for 30 years or even 15 or 20 years, and it's a lot of money. So you do want to be aware that when you make an investment like this, you are spending a lot on interest. So again, you want the lowest rate you can get on that mortgage, and you want to do it in the quickest amount of time. So if you can do it in 15 years or 20 years and can afford it, you want to be careful, because it's going to make your monthly payment a lot higher if you do it in 15 or 20 years, but it's going to save you interest in the long run. So we always try to do the best interest we can for the lowest amount of time. And that will help you keep it down. You can also do extra payments too. So you do want to check your loans. Every time you have a loan, make sure there is no prepayment penalty fee, which means that you can make extra payments and pay the loan off early without a penalty. A lot of loans will allow you to do that. So, you know, if you get your taxes back in April and you can take some money and put it towards your mortgage or your car loan, or you get a bonus at work and you can take a little bit of that money and put it towards your mortgage, or even, you know, let's see, our monthly payment was, what was our monthly payment? $12.27. Maybe you round up. Maybe you pay $12.50 every month, right? Instead. So that little bit is going to help, and it's really going to start bringing that interest down for you in the long run.